I think the overriding thread or the overriding sort of theme of all my work is the ocean, life in the ocean, and our often, conflicted relationship with it. So I'm very interested in how our relationship with the oceans have changed and how we have been impacting it largely negatively over the last, half a century, even longer in many regards. I see myself very much as as a storyteller and as somebody who tries to take a largely inaccessible world and make it accessible to a larger audience through my images. So that's kind of how I view what I do on a daily basis anyway. I'm probably on the road a good 300 days a year, and a lot of those days are spent in, under, or on the water. That's an environment that I've been immersed in since I was 12 years old. It's an environment I grew up in many ways. I used to be a marine biologist, so I come from a science research background, and one of the reasons I moved about 10 years ago from science to photography was because as much as I loved the research and the work I was doing, the audience I was reaching was incredibly small, and the statistics and the numbers and the scientific research papers, they were just not having the desired conservation impact I'd hoped for. So real passion has always been sharks, and shark fin trade, and kind of how we've impacted shark populations in the last 30, 40, 50 years. And I think sharks being, apex predators, they're on top of the food chain. They're a really good surrogate. They're a great conservation flagship species. If you look after sharks and if you protect sharks, you're also automatically, really looking after the ecosystem as a whole. And of course, if you lose sharks in an ecosystem, there's a lot of knock-on effects that affects, the larger ecosystems as a whole. So I try to balance between the inspirational and the little bit more gory, darker side of things in many ways. So most of these whale shark images came out of a National Geographic magazine story on Arabian seas, and I worked in the Middle East for that, in Oman, in Saudi Arabia, in the Gulf of Aden, in UAE, right across the region. And Arabia is one of those areas that people tend to associate with oil and terrorism and conflict, and not with coral reefs, sea turtles or whale sharks. So for me, it was just one of those really wonderful opportunities to kind of showcase a region that people think they know in a very, very different light. The local artisanal fishermen, the Somali and the Afari fishermen, they fish at night, and they attract bait fish. And the whale sharks have learned to follow these boats around because, the bait fish are a free meal. So when I found out about that, I was just thinking, well, no one's ever heard about it, hasn't been photographed or documented, before at all. And I wanted to, well, this would be a wonderful way to kind of, really, showcase whale sharks in the Arabian region in a really, really completely different way. A lot of these larger, marine animals are individuals, and there's individuals that are totally disinterested. They'll swim past you, they won't even check you out, and they're fast, they're big and they're quick, and you can't keep up with them. And then there's individuals that are curious. They'll go, hang on, they'll stop, they'll hover around you, they'll nudge you sometimes, curious. And those are the individuals that, yield the best images because they've made a decision to actually enter your personal space, and they are okay with you being there. You can spend a month photographing, and looking back, all the good images are of one shark. Luckily, I was working with the film crew who were sharing the dhow I was staying on, and they had a large cinematic movie light that literally, I don't know how many thousands of what that beast had, but basically, we hung it over the back of our boat, and we positioned our boat near the fishermen. And after about an hour, the whale sharks began to arrive, and that this sort of young baby whale shark, swam into the cone of light, perfect fit, and that's one of the images in this year's World Press Awards, and that probably is the one image of these sharks in Arabia that sort of really, I think, has captured best the real essence of actually having, of actually being there. That's the one image that sort of really, for me, I love the most. The other one is of a whale shark in a plastic bag. Coral reefs covered in plastic bag, whale sharks feeding near plastic bags, and things like that. So I thought that one image of the whale shark and the plastic bag was a really sort of a bit of a bit of a warning, a bit of a sort of a reality check to that wonderful nighttime underwater shot where everything seems serene and beautiful, that it's a, it's a double-edged sword in many ways, and that while these whale sharks are safe and secure now, their future is certainly not guaranteed at the moment. We've sort of come a long way with sharks as well, I must say. 10, 15 years ago, shark conservation didn't really exist. Whales and dolphins, absolutely. Massive campaigns beginning in the 80s to save whales and dolphins, but shark conservation in the 1980s, almost unheard of. Do we have a few decades? Do shark populations have another 20 years before it becomes a sort of a rarity? That's the big issue at the moment, because we've just, many populations have crashed because of overfishing. So again, that's where the market lies, and that's, I think, where a lot of the really effective conservation efforts have to happen.